Hokage I'll become stronger when I'm fishing. Chapter 221-240. Chapter 221. Transformation Plan, Amazing Effect. In the absence of specific information, it is impossible to send general-level combat power to chase clues all day long to investigate. I can't shake the fundamentals for the time being. One of the 5 old stars picked up the teacup and took a sip of tea. Wu Laoxing, who was holding a sword next to him, tapped the ground with the tip of his sword, and said, "The New World has stabilized during this time, which is a good thing." "Not bad." The 5 old stars sitting on the sofa said solemnly, "Although Kaido has gained the power of the remnants of the pirates, it has grown a little bigger. However, it has formed a balance with the 8 gods pirates, so the 8 gods pirates can only be quiet. For them, the most important thing is balance. As long as the sea can be balanced and does not threaten the existence of the world government, even if the new world is given to the 4 emperors to divide the territory. Today, the 4 emperors of the new world are divided. Unless there are special circumstances, they cannot send troops to the new world to destroy 4 emperors. That would cause the other 4 emperors to follow suit, possibly triggering a worldwide war. Coupled with the Revolutionary Army taking advantage of the situation, there are too many variables. It's a good thing that Yagami Kangdu can settle down. Taking over the territory, he is now a so-called emperor." The 5 old stars standing next to the sofa said lightly, "Once you have power, rule a sea area, and stand on a high place where countless people look up, your edge will gradually be smoothed out. This world has always been like this, people who have nothing dare to fight and dare to fight. But once you have power and power, you will start to fear losing. Acting will become cautious, no longer sharp. When Kaido and he didn't become the 4th emperor, the whole world that was tossing and turning was in turmoil, causing one war after another. But of the 4 emperors' system and the division of their respective territories, this sea is much more stable than in previous years. Although the Revolutionary Army is in chaos everywhere, as long as Yagami Kangta doesn't do anything, other 4 emperors are in peace, then the world will not be chaotic. It is not a big problem for them." Speaking of which, Vegapunk reported before that the 3rd transformation was successful. Oh. The 5 old stars next to him were not responsible for the management of the scientific troop, and his words immediately turned around. Although they are not in charge of management, they have heard about the transformation reported by Vegapunk. Completion of the 3 rounds of transformation, the combat power of the admiral level has been created. I didn't expect Doberman to be able to exert residual heat. The Wu Laoxing sitting there took a sip of tea and said, "It's a pity that mass production is impossible, and the price of failure is too high. Otherwise, there is no need for Chiwahai to exist. Vegapunk can mass produce 3 or 5 types of 35 combat power, then the balance of Shichibukai can be discarded at any time. Even if it can't be mass-produced, it is very meaningful to be able to succeed." The sword-wielding 5 old stars spoke solemnly. Admiral-level combat power is a rare strength for the entire world government. Vegapunk really did a big thing this time. "When can I call?" "Just ask." Several 5 old stars discussed each other, planning to ask Vegapunk when Doberman's transformation combat power can be used. One of them found a phone bug and was about to call Vegapunk. But at this moment, a person from the world government rushed in, looked at Wu Laoxing sweating profusely, and said, "Lord Wu Laoxing, something happened. Base 0 was raided by Yagami Kangdu and has now been completely occupied. All the instruments and test items are gone, only Lord Vegapunk escaped." Click. This is the sound of teacups falling on the floor, and broken glass splashing everywhere. The whole hall was silent, only the tea was flowing slowly on the ground. The wind is calm inside the calm zone, but outside the windless zone, it is now a violent storm. The sea is undulating and undercurrents are surging. A line apart. The weather conditions were different. Road controlled the rudder and commanded the toy soldiers to reel and hang the sails, so that the boat could be supported in the storm without being swept into the calm zone by the undercurrent. It's been almost 12 hours, and Captain Yagami Kangdu hasn't come back. Gels stood on the deck, looking in the direction of the windlass belt. A look of worry flashed across his face. As a subordinate of Yagami Kangdu, he is naturally very clear about the strength of Yagami Kangdu. He knew just as well how dangerous the windlass sea bottom was. Coupled with the mysterious science force base, no one knows what will happen. Nina held Yagami Kangdu's life card. Her dark pupils did not show any panic or other emotions, and said, "The life card has not changed, we will continue to wait." The life card belonging to Yagami Kangdu did not show any abnormality, which means that Yagami Kangdu is not in any danger now. Therefore, there is no need to rush. If they recklessly broke into the windlass belt and were besieged by a large number of sea kings, then the problem would be serious. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 222, Conflict, Whitebeard Pirates. Just as a group of people were waiting in the storm, Rhodes suddenly laughed and said, "It seems that there is no need to wait, the captain is back. It seems that the base has been found." Nina also stood up straight and looked towards the direction where Yagami Soto flew over. "I saw a large number of strange instruments carried by Yagami Kanto, as well as an owl that was much fatter and bigger than Yagami Kanto." Clap la la. A huge wave came, and the sailing boats were going up and down in the waves, and there was a vague feeling that the boat was about to capsize. But at this moment, the figure of Yagami Kangdu broke through the waves and landed on the boat. As soon as both feet stepped on the boat, the turbulent sea surface forcibly suppressed the rolling currents and waves. Then, the owl also landed on the deck. "Captain, who is that guy?" Rhodes pointed to Caesar. The deck stably and said, "I didn't catch Vegapunk, but this guy is also useful." Soon, Caesar was arranged, and Nina informed Yagami Soto of the latest information. Regarding the Whitebeard pirates, this made Yagami Kanto's brows slightly raised. Yagami Kangdu returned to his exclusive cabin, and pondered, "Kaido's power is growing, and it is not easy to deal with temporarily. Do you want to attack Whitebeard?" Yagami Soto now has absolute certainty over Kaido, and even if he can't kill him, it is enough to suppress him. But his subordinates together may not be able to deal with Kaido's 3 disasters, 2 generals, and the huge forces that merge the remnants of the party. Compare. Under the Whitebeard pirates, only the captains of the top 5 divisions have the strength of 3 disasters. And the captain of the 2nd and 2nd division is still vacant. That is, there are only 4 44-star war powers. However, Blackbeard, who has not obtained the dark fruit, is not yet clear about his combat effectiveness. Maybe he also has the strength of a general star, and he may be clumsy at ordinary times, but he must show his ability in the face of a life-and-death crisis. Which joined the remnants of the pirates, doesn't seem to be much stronger than the Whitebeard pirates at such a rough look. After all, before the appearance of Yagami Kangdu, the power of the White Thief was recognized as the head of the 4 emperors. The current situation of the sea, to deal with one of the 4 emperors, it is not just a simple imperial battle. The navy and world government are bound to hear the news. The other 4 emperors may not be able to sit still. The root cause of the chaos in the previous 5 emperors period was the inevitable result of the imbalance of power. Therefore, no amount of chaos can stop it. But, after dying in the hands of Yagami Kangdu, the new world has returned to the era of the 4 emperors, which is equivalent to restoring balance. Therefore, once it is moved, the consequences will be very large. Yagami Kangdu led the main force to leave the Wangguo Sea area. Will Wangguo be attacked by the navy? Whether the other 4 emperors will intervene? These are all questions. Although the navy dares to intervene in the Wangguo domain, when the battle is over, Yagami Kangdu will also take the navy. Surgery, but all this must be mentally prepared in advance. In terms of Yagami Kangdu's current status, it can be said that any decision is enough to make waves on the Great Root and even the entire world. However, just when Iori Kangdu was thinking, Nina said to Iori Kangdu with a dignified expression, "Our people and the Whitebeard pirates are fighting." What's the matter with the Whitebeard pirates? Iori Kingdu frowned slightly, looked at Nina, and asked in a deep voice. Nina held the phone bug in her hand and placed it in front of Yagami Kingdu, saying, "The matter seems to be a bit complicated, you can ask it yourself." Is it Captain Yagami Aoto? On the other side of the phone bug came the voice of Shiryu of the Rain. Yagami Kingdu looked at the phone bug, his eyes flickered slightly, and asked, "Why did you guys fight with the Whitebeard pirates? What happened?" "It's a long story, but I haven't fought them yet." Shiryu of Rain's voice was a little depressed, and said, "Now I'm on my way to set off. This matter is beyond the scope of what the laughing guy can handle, so I can only ask you." Hearing that Shiryu of the Rain had not yet fought against the Whitebeard pirates, Yagami Kingdu estimated that the situation was not bad enough to start a war, so he softened his tone a little and asked, "Tell me more about it." "That's it." Yujixi stayed on the other end of the phone and spoke slowly, narrating the events that happened during the days when Yagami Kingdu was away. Today's Yagami pirates are massively expanding their intelligence force. The subordinates under his command are spread across many islands, including the territories of the other 4 emperors. Just a few days ago, the intelligence force found a devil fruit on Frost Island, one of Whitebeard's territories. When he was about to bring it back, he was discovered by the members of the Whitebeard pirates. That appeared in Whitebeard's territory was first discovered by people under the command of Yagami Kanto. That the two sides could not reach a consensus on who this devil fruit should belong to. Chapter 223, Attack, Iori Pirates. Although the pirates on that island were not directly under Whitebeard's pirates at all, they were just one of the 16 branch fleets under his command. But the intelligence personnel on Yagami Kingdu's side were even weaker, and the devil fruit was eventually robbed. The devil fruit found by the intelligence force was robbed, and that's okay. The devil fruit they found was taken away by someone else. If Yagami Kingdu finds out after the fact, with Yagami Kingdu's character, that's fine. No one can rob them from them, not even the Whitebeard pirates. And the other party is not the Whitebeard pirates either, it's just a team under the city pirates that is attached to the Whitebeard pirates. So, Yujixi left the order to snatch it back. However, this side grabbed it back, and the city pirates were naturally furious. Its captain immediately ordered the whole ship to pursue, because the place is in the territory of the Whitebeard pirates. Shiryu of the Rain and others were eventually caught up. Shiryu of the Rain did not expect the opponent's pursuit to be so fast, so he responded passively in a hurry. The two sides fought a bloody battle at sea, and both sides fought a real fire. In the end, both sides suffered heavy casualties. This time the situation changed dramatically. Was originally just a member of the lowest level has evolved into Shiryu of the Rain, a bloody battle with the city pirates affiliated to the Whitebeard pirates. And he hold it any longer, and reported it layer by layer. So, the captain of the Whitebeard pirates has already been dispatched. Yagami Kingdu asked Shiryu of Rain. Yes. Shiryu of the Rain said coldly, since the captain has been dispatched from the opposite side, we can't remain indifferent. The copyright of the novel resource belongs to the original author. The text is only for personal study and trial reading. Please delete it within 24 hours after downloading. Please support subscribing to genuine novels and reject piracy. This novel was first published by Dragon. Feilu's novel internal group 1,142,529,731. More wonderful Feilu novels are in the hands of the group owner. Welcome to the group. However, confronting the Whitebeard pirates is no longer a responsibility that Fujitora can afford. When Yagami Soto was not in the 10,000 Kingdoms Sea, most of the matters were handled by Fujitora. But there is also an upper limit to what Fujitora can handle, and he has a head-on conflict with the captain of the Whitebeard pirates. Obviously, he can't make a decision on such a big matter and must report it to Yagami Soto. I see. Yagami Kingdu nodded and said, what power is the magic fruit? I don't know. It's a transfer from the superhuman type. Shiryu of Rain didn't care about the evil's specific abilities, but the vice captain next to him told him in a low voice. A trace of surprise flashed in the eyes of Yagami Kingdu, who transferred the fruit. He was very impressed with this fruit, and it was one of the abilities of a certain pirate who once died in his hands. It can transfer all attacks and all damage within the range, similar to the ability to move the universe. This fruit is undoubtedly extremely powerful. Then, Captain, your decision is. Shiryu of the Rain held the phone bug and spoke slowly to Yagami Kingdu on the other side of the phone bug. You go. Iori Kingdu's eyes became calm, and he said indifferently, show the Whitebeard a little color, not everyone is qualified to grab our things. I see. Shiryu of the Rain grinned, as if he had expected Yagami Kanto to make such a decision. He followed Yagami Kingdu all the way, but he had never seen Yagami Kingdu be afraid of anyone. Even the Navy headquarters dared to break through. Destroy the naval headquarters in front of Marshal Sengoku. One crazy thing, one crazy decision. Destined that their 8 gods pirates are the most unprovoked existences in this sea. Coup. The phone bug was hung up. Nina put the phone bug in her pocket, and her expression did not change in any surprise because of Yagami Soto's words. The decision is made. The ability to transfer fruit, if used by the giants, can create a powerful combat force. Yagami Kingdu took a sip of water from the teacup and said, so this fruit. I'm going to settle it. Whitebeard can't keep it. Atwal, Stuart sees. This is the sea area ruled by Whitebeard, but it is located on the edge, and the territory occupied by Whitebeard is the largest of all the 4 emperors. Boom, boom, cannonballs cut through the sky and fell on the sea, and the blasting waves splashed everywhere. I saw 3 ships flying the flags of different pirate groups, chasing from 2 directions a ship that looked a little broken and seemed to have experienced a war. On the mast of this ship hangs the flag representing the 8 gods. Navy Headquarters. The top office, Marshal Sengoku is reviewing documents. Marshal of the Warring States, urgent information. A rear admiral rushed into the office in a hurry, and reported to the Warring States way with a nervous face. The officers of the Yagami pirates and the pirates of the Whitebeard pirates had a violent conflict in the Atwal waters. Hearing the report of the rear admiral, Sengoku suddenly raised his head. It is not uncommon for the 4 emperor pirates to clash. Generally, as long as the 4 emperors themselves are not involved or a full-scale war is launched, the Navy generally monitors them. But it's a different situation when it comes to the 8 gods pirates. Feilu reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend, and share. Chapter 224. Madden, a big event that the world pays attention to. Who was once overturned by the naval headquarters in front of him, knew exactly how crazy Yagami Soto was. Conflict between the people under the Yagami pirates and the pirates under the Whitebeard pirates will probably not be as simple as an ordinary local war. Atwal Sea area, it should be the Whitebeard's territory, Yagami. Why are you fighting the Whitebeard there? Warring States stood up and asked the Major General with a serious face. The Major General said in a tense tone, the specific reason is not clear, but it seems to be because of the fight for a one devil fruit. Warring States' eyes flickered slightly, and he said solemnly, what's going on in the Wenguahai Sea and Whitebeard? Not yet clear. The Major General bowed his head. Even if there is a local war between the 8 gods pirates and the Whitebeard pirates, it is the news that has just been received. Although the Navy is staring at the 4 emperors all the time, it is impossible to grasp every move of the 4 emperors' pirates. Check it out now. The Warring States shouted in a deep voice. The Major General responded and immediately turned around and left the office. After the Major General pushed the door and left, Sengoku, who was standing there, leaned down. With both hands propped up on the tabletop of the desk, there was an expression of severe headache on his face. Yagami Kingdu. It's Yagami Kingdu again. He only received information from the world government a few hours ago that Yagami Kingdu had attacked the Zero base of the Science Force. The news of the annihilation of Base Zero except for Vegapunk's escape. In less than a few hours, the Yagami pirates and the Whitebeard pirates clashed again. Is a troublemaker at all, causing a lot of trouble in minutes. Soon after, a vice admiral hurriedly came to Sengoku's office and reported to Sengoku the specific movements of the Whitebeard pirates and the Yagami pirates with a solemn face. The Yagami pirates' fleet is dispatched on a large scale, and the same is true for the Whitebeard pirates. 2 captains have already set off a day ago. Call a high-level meeting. Warring States took a deep breath, and there was a dignified look in his eyes. If it's just a local war, you can wait and see for the time being. But when it comes to the Whitebeard pirates and Iori captain-level characters, it is likely to turn into a full-scale war. If Whitebeard fights Iori, their naval headquarters will ignore it. Action must be started, but how to act is still a careful strategy. At the same time, in the realm of beasts, somewhere on the sea. Ah, why did the 8 gods have sex with that white-bearded old man? Beast Kaido rubbed his head with a headache while listening to his subordinate's report. Master Kaido, shall we act? A person next to him said solemnly, taking advantage of the conflict between the 8 gods and the Whitebeard, we can seize all the territory of the 8 gods. Kaido sat there cross-legged and did not respond. Taking advantage of the conflict between the Yagami pirates and the Whitebeard pirates, what a joke to take the Yagami's territory. If he did such a shameful thing, where else would he put Kaido's face? This kind of thinking did not exist in his thoughts at all. On the contrary, if Yagami and Whitebeard really fought, he would be quite interested. Of course it wasn't a sneak attack, but I wanted to see the battle between the two. Last time, Kaido was not convinced when he was defeated by Yagami Kangdu. Iron Wall Pirates. Somewhere on the grass, the red-haired pirates are having a party. Laughing, eating and drinking with each other, the reason for this gathering was the visit of Hokage I'll. But at this time, everyone's chatting and laughing had stopped, and there were only some low-pitched drinking sounds left in the field. Sure enough, it's a guy who can't be safe. Listening to the subordinate's report, Shanks sat there wearing a black cloak, facing the direction of the coast, showing a deep gaze. Beckman sat on a rock behind Shanks, took a puff of cigarette, and said slowly, looking at this momentum, a big battle is inevitable. A1 devil fruit, unless it's a thunder fruit. Otherwise, for the 4 emperor pirates, it's not a big deal. As long as either side makes a slight concession in this matter, the conflict will be immediate. Stop. The problem is that neither Yagami Kangta nor Whitebeard seem to be willing to give in. And once neither side chooses to make concessions, that imperial battle is inevitable. What are we going to do, boss? Reikulu took a bite of the meat and asked Shanks. Shanks lowered his head, closed his eyes slightly, opened them slowly, and stood up. Wrapping his cloak, he said with deep eyes, ready to go. Are we going to fight? Reikulu swallowed the meat into his stomach. Beckman also stood up, tucked the cigarette butt between his fingers, and said solemnly, then it depends on how chaotic things will be. The Navy will not sit back and watch, and Kaido will not necessarily stand by. Iori Kangdu. Hokage sat not far away, bowed his head, revealing a contemplative look. He has an impression of Yagami Kanto. Recently, people who are popular all over the world. Even a big swordsman like him has to pay attention. It's just that Hokage couldn't imagine how long it took for Yagami Kangdu to reach the current level. Chapter 225, Suppression, Beasta joins. You know Yagami. Shanks heard Hawkeye's muttering and looked at him slightly strangely. Hawkeye stood up, shook his head and said, I don't know, I just heard about it. Appeared suddenly, conquered the Great Root in a short period of time, a very powerful guy. Ha ha ha, that's true. Shanks laughed out loud. He is no different from Hawkeye, and he didn't pay much attention to Yagami Kanto. After all, there are so many arrogant pirates that appear every year, and none of them can reach the level of Yagami Kangdu today. Quickly ranked among the 4 emperors, this is something that even he can't do. Do you want to go together? Laughter fell, and Shanks looked at Hawkeye. Hawkeye pondered slightly, and said, "The government may call Chihuahua. If you don't mind, I will take a ride." Hours later. The conflict between the Eight Gods pirates and the Whitebeard pirates began to expand towards the entire sea at a very fast speed. Countless large and small forces have received news one after another. The world is watching. Whether it is related to the Whitebeard pirates or the Yagami pirates, almost all of them are nervous. The demise of the thief is still vivid in our eyes. And the impact after the annihilation, the big shuffling of the underground world, also caused the whole world to be in chaos for a period of time, and it spread to an extremely wide range. Between the Eight Gods pirates and the Whitebeard pirates will probably only have a big impact, not a small one. The Atoll Sea area. Eight Gods pirates, and several pirates such as City, Black Mist, etc. under the Whitebeard, are in fierce confrontation. After hours of fierce fighting, neither side gained any advantage. Large number of ships sank, a tragic appearance. However, it is still not over. Battle is still going on. That's Captain Beast's ship. It was at this moment that Heiwu noticed the change in his expression, and also glanced at the corner of his eye, and saw the approaching ship. Whitebeard pirates, Woofin, Foil Beasta. Now the captain of the 2nd and 2nd Division of the Whitebeard pirates is vacant, and Beasta ranks 5th in the Whitebeard pirates. Second only to Whitebeard himself, and Marco and other top-ranked captains. I thought I could kill you before the captain came, but I didn't expect your resistance to be quite tenacious. But that's all there is to it. Captain Black Mist stood with his sword crossed, and a look of contempt appeared in his eyes. This crew member of the Eight Gods pirates is indeed quite powerful. But when you meet Captain Beasta, you are like a turkey, vulnerable to a single blow. This is the territory of their Whitebeard pirates. What the Eight Gods pirates, wanting to act recklessly in their territory is undoubtedly wishful thinking. This is trouble. The people from the Yashin pirates also saw the ship coming from a distance, the ship with the flag of the Whitebeard pirates, and their faces became ugly. With Beasta's fame, it is natural that he will not be unknown. There are nearly 1,600 members of the Whitebeard pirates, divided into 16 divisions, led by 15 captains. As they can serve as captains, each of them is a very strong and brave character. In addition to the 16 Ben's squads, the Whitebeard pirates also have 43 New World pirates, City and Black Mist, and the White Blades are just 3 of them. If it came from a pirate group under the Whitebeard pirates, it wouldn't be a big problem. But the ship coming with the flag of Whitebeard is obviously one of the ships of the Whitebeard pirates. Reinforcement of the Whitebeard pirates. What shall we do? Of the pirates affiliated to the Eight Gods pirates also changed. In the current situation, there is no chance to escape. First, the remaining ships were badly damaged, and secondly, there was a lot of fighting between the two sides, and there was no chance of separation at all. Seeing Whitebeard's ship getting closer and closer, the crew of the pirates affiliated to the Yagami pirates became more and more nervous. For a while, I didn't know what to do. On Whitebeard's ship, the captain of the 5th Division, was standing at the forefront of the deck. Looking at the direction of the battlefield from a distance, his face is steady and calm. It's really tragic. The people of the Eight Gods Kangdu are so arrogant, how dare they do whatever they want in our territory? A cadre standing behind Beasta said angrily. Beasta narrowed his eyes slightly and said, "No matter how mad they are and hurt our comrades, we must let them have a long memory. This is the place where the old man sits, so we can't let outsiders look down on us." As the ship got closer and closer to the battlefield, Beasta judged the distance, and there was a faint glint in his eyes. Suddenly, he jumped, crossed an arc, and directly invaded the battlefield. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 226, Upheaval, Terrible Idea. Whoosh! He landed on the bow of one of the boats, touched the raised guard rail on the deck, and jumped up again. While flying towards the second ship behind, his gaze fell precisely on the leader of the pirates affiliated to the Yagami pirates who were fighting with the two of them. The leading subordinate crew, holding two swords in the forehand, fought fiercely with the black mist and the white blade. He was covered in blood and screamed again and again, trying to get rid of black mist and white blade before Whitebeard's ship arrived. But the strength gap between the two sides is not big. Even if he ignores the injury and fights for his life, it is difficult to defeat Heiwu and Bai Ren in such a short period of time, and at most he has the upper hand. And just as he was attacking frantically, desperately trying to suppress Heiwu and Bai Ren with one enemy and two, a few strange flower petals suddenly floated over from one side. Kai, the petals brushed against his cheek, leaving a bloodstain on his face instantly. Carefully use the sense of sight to perceive, those are not petals, but slashes with sharp edges. Sudden changes, the leader of the 8 gods pirates, immediately turned over and jumped back, avoiding the strange petals that swept over. Captain Vista. The moment the black mist and the white blade saw the petals, they immediately turn around and look to the other side. It is a man wearing a black cloak, wearing a top hat, holding 2 swords. Foil Vista forced back the enemy leader with a sword, and Heiwu and the others immediately felt relieved. Whitebeard Pirates, captain of the 3rd Division. Foil Vista. The leader of the affiliated pirates, staring at Vista. Feeling the aura of the looming top swordsman on the other side, his face was very ugly. Vista lowered the blade slowly and said, "Do you know me?" Under the oppression brought by Vista, the leading crew did not show any fear, but said with a stern face, "It's strange that you don't know each other. Fight the little one, and then the old one, haha, the wheel battle." Hearing the words of the leader of the affiliated pirate group, Vista did not get angry. Was a smile like a swordsman's etiquette on his face, but an aura of energy suddenly stirred up. He is a swordsman who uses 2 swords, but at the moment he only has a sword. He raised the blade and placed it in front of him, saying, "Above this sea, do you think there is justice?" Whoosh! In the next instant, the Beth man rushed forward and slashed out with a sword. The moment the blade was swung out, the petals flew everywhere. The leader of the affiliated pirate group, his face changed greatly. The knowledge color caught Vista's movements, but there was no time to avoid it. He only had time to put the 2 swords in front of him, crossed them forward, and collided with Vista's blade. Clang! Sparks splashed, and a sharp edge came in, leaving a bloodstain on his shoulder. Your dual swordsmanship. Those who practice cultivation are not at home yet. Vista looked at the other party lightly, and the blade in his hand slammed hard. The leader of the affiliated pirate group only felt the overwhelming force coming, and the whole person flew out uncontrollably. The disparity in strength was revealed in an instant. Vista looked at the enemy who was forced to retreat, flipped the blade in his hand, and slashed out from a distance. In an instant, a huge sword chi burst out, like a red sword, attacking away. Don't think that if you become one of the 4 emperors, you can do whatever you want, and develop slowly and honestly. Boom! The leader of the affiliated pirate group is in the process of slipping back, and there is no way to avoid this sword energy. Can only be forced to double swords, trying to parry. But in the roar, the whole person still flew out backwards. Flew straight out of the boat and fell into the sea. Vista walked forward holding the sword, came to the side of the ship's board, and looked at the sea below. There were many corpses floating in the sea water, and the figure of the affiliated pirate group quickly floated up from the water and coughed violently. Although he was not seriously injured, he was obviously unable to fight against Vista. But just when Vista was about to deal with the opponent, he suddenly froze slightly and looked up at the sea level in the distance. Only sea. At the end of the line of sight, a large pirate ship with the banner of the Yagami pirates is flying at full speed in this direction. Captain Shiryu is here. 8 gods pirates, the pirates affiliated with the pirates, had a somewhat collapsed momentum, but they were revived in an instant. Vista still kept the polite smile of a swordsman on his face, but the gaze in his eyes was vaguely heavy. Unexpectedly, the people of the Eight Gods Pirates are still continuing to reinforce, this is their territory. Could it be that the Eight Gods Pirates plan to go to war with them? Vista didn't do it again. Although he is not afraid, the Whitebeard Pirates cannot be afraid either. It is not something he can decide to start a full-scale war with the Eight Gods Pirates. If it can be resolved, the conflict can now be contained to a certain extent. Chapter 227. Stop talking nonsense, let's fight. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. The Rain Shiryu's ship is finally approaching the battlefield. Shiryu of the Rain, wearing a black cloak, stood at the forefront of the deck. Looking at the direction of the battlefield, a face is slanted down, the corners of the mouth are raised, and the teeth are exposed. Whoosh! He leapt, stepping on the void, stepping on the moon. After a few verticals, it had already landed on a ship in the battlefield, not far from Vista. Captain Shiryu, the leader of the affiliated pirate group who was floating in the sea, was overjoyed and called out to Shiryu of the Rain. Shiryu of the Rain turned his back to him, turned his head when he heard the words, glanced at him, and said, "It's hard work, is this guy doing it?" He was smoking a cigar and looking at Vista. The Eight Gods Pirates, Shiryu of the Rain. Vista looked at Shiryu of the Rain, and said slowly, "I heard your name a long time ago, but at that time you were still the chief guard of the advanced city." "Is that so? I've quit guarding prisons. I've been working for a long time." Shiryu of the Rain, wearing a black cloak, looked at Foil Vista, surrounded by smoke, and said, "I am now the captain of the Squadron of the Nations." Vista said slowly, "You people from the Eight Gods Pirates, who came to our site to make trouble, you should give an explanation. Are you ready for war?" Shiryu of the Rain drank a cigar and squinted his eyes. "Do you know what our captain said?" Vista sensed the changing momentum of Shiryu the Rain, and put his hand on the hilt of the sword. Shiryu of the Rain exhaled a breath of smoke, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. "Kill without mercy." Whoosh! Shiryu of the Rain drew his sword out of the scabbard, and an afterimage passed through his entire body. In an instant, he rushed towards Foil Vista. His hand was wrapped in a cold light, and suddenly fell. Vista was well prepared, his sword staggered, and Yingliu's blade blocked it. Chong! The swords of the two collided in an instant, and I saw countless petals appearing in the void, and these petals were all burned in an instant. Is it really crazy to start a war? The smile on Foil Vista's face narrowed slightly, revealing a gloomy gaze. Since the other party is determined to fight, it is impossible for their Whitebeard pirates to be looked down upon. Battle is the battle, whoever is afraid of who will come. Two swords, instant slash. A cold light flashed in Vista's eyes, and the whole person took a step forward. The two swords in his hand slashed alternately, forming a sharp cutting edge. Chong! Rain Shiryu waved his sword to resist. His sword was steady, and he blocked Vista's blow. An extremely hot force spread out from the blade of Shiryu of the Rain, blocking Vista's blade halfway. At this moment, Shiryu of the Rain, the dark cloak was already covered with a layer of flames. At the position where he stood, there were faint traces of coke on the board of the ship, and there was even a spreading situation. Flame-based swordsmanship. Ah, no, this is a devil fruit. Vista frowned slightly as he looked at the half of his blade that was almost melted. I thought Shiryu of the Rain was a swordsman with fire-type sword intent, but unexpectedly, he was a devil fruit capable. In the previous collision, he had already noticed the swordsmanship of Shiryu of the Rain. It's not that far from him. And he does not have the ability of devil fruit, if the opponent can perfectly combine the ability of fruit and swordsmanship. The strength is undoubtedly higher than him. Armed. Vista took a breath, and the aura of armament was aroused, surrounding the blade. In an instant, the blade of the sword was entangled, and the two double swords in his hand turned into a pitch-black color. With the domineering blessing of the armed color, the flames covered by the blade were also dispelled. Shiryu of the Rain snorted coldly and took a step forward with his sword. The sword's stance was fierce and vicious. In the past, he was swordsmanship. It is more inclined to kill and murder. Different from Fujitori's, relying on the ability of gravity to be hard on the front. But now, after the development of the hot fruit to a certain extent, he also began to like this positive and strong style. Only those who are strong enough can display the true power of this fighting style. Opponent to collide with you head-on, and every move can suppress the opponent, one step at a time, knocking the opponent into a desperate situation. Facing the sword of Shiryu of the Rain, Vista was forced to parry. This pure trick, if he chooses to evade, Shiryu of the Rain will immediately. It will make up for the second sword and the third sword, and it will inevitably fall into the disadvantage. 4. A swordsman who abandons his defenses and is all about attacking. Once one side starts dodging instead of parrying and fighting back, the balance of victory and defeat begins to tilt. Chong. Under the heavy pressure of Shiryu the Rain's sword, Vista's feet sank. The ship's board, which was already somewhat fragmented, suddenly heard an overwhelmed squeak. Sound. Shiryu of the Rain took advantage of the situation and continued to attack with his sword, without giving Foil Vista any chance to breathe. His hot fruit, and swordsmanship. It has reached a state of near-perfect integration. If he now confronts Fujitora head-on, the difference in strength is already very small. You fight for life and death, the possibility of winning or losing is infinitely close to 55. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend, and share. Chapter 228. Do not give in to each other, the showdown of top swordsmen. Captain Vista. Wu and Bai Ren, seeing Shiryu of the Rain vaguely gaining the upper hand, couldn't help shaking their hearts. It was the first time they saw that there was a swordsman who could directly suppress the foil Vista. Vista always had the idea of competing with Hokage, but because Hokage was erratic, he couldn't find anyone at all. And as the captain of the Whitebeard Pirates, it is impossible for him to go all the way to the Hokage duel, so he has been shelved. In the eyes of Heiwu and others, the position of the world's greatest swordsman may not necessarily belong to Hokage. But now, Vista was so severely suppressed. Unbelievable, Captain Vista has fallen behind. Captain of the 8 Gods Pirates, Shiryu of the Rain. Countless people looked at the battlefield between Shiryu of the Rain and Vista, and their expressions changed when they saw that Vista was strongly suppressed by Shiryu of the Rain. Of the 8 Gods Pirates are naturally determined in their hearts. At the same time, he looked at the pirate under the white beard with a grim smile on his face. Under Whitebeard's command sank in their hearts. Wow! The leader of the affiliated pirate group of the 8 Gods Pirates climbed up from the water, came to the front of Heiwu and Baron, smiled at them, and said, "It seems that your captain, it seems that not our captain's opponent." Heiwu and Bai Ren looked at him with gloomy expressions. The leader of the affiliated pirate group threw off the water droplets on the blade, looked at the black mist and the white blade, and grinned. "Come on. Where is the momentum just now?" Unexpectedly, Foil Vista suddenly came, and his side almost capsized. Fortunately, Shiryu of the Rain arrived in time, and he was naturally very unhappy in his heart. Now that their support has come too, that's not much to say. That's it. Killed it. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The members of the pirates affiliated to the 8 Gods Pirates, in a surging mood, inserted horizontally into the battlefield. At the same time, many pirates from Whitebeard's ship also poured into the battlefield one after another. The situation that had been stagnant due to several hours of fighting suddenly turned into a larger-scale conflict, and it began to intensify. Kacha, Kacha, Shiryu of the Rain and Vista broke the boat and fell to the sea. A few contacts, the more in Vista's heart. Shiryu of the Rain is better than him in every way. But even so, Vista had no intention of admitting defeat. He smashed the wooden board under his feet with one foot, and rushed towards Shiryu of the Rain. Trying to take this opportunity to pull back the situation and switch from defense to offense. 2 knives go upstairs. The 2 knives slammed upwards, clinging to the dark blade of the domineering armed color. Wrapped in a sharp edge, it cuts vertically from left to right. collided with Vesta's twin swords in front of him. Clang! It's like the grinding wheel rubs steel, and sparks are constantly splashing. Two swordsmen should go upstairs. After Vista's double swords were cut vertically, they suddenly edged again. Pressed down in both directions again, forming a series of fierce attacks. Rain was still wielding his sword to resist, his face was calm, and he was holding a cigar. Under the fierce attack of Vista, he took a step back, and the second-generation ghost in his hand was waving up and down. In a blink of an eye, dozens of tricks passed, and Vista forced Shiryu of Rain to retreat 4 or 5 steps. But it failed to cause any damage to Shiryu of Rain, and was blocked by Shiryu of Rain. Is that so? Shiryu of the Rain blocked Vista's last blow, sent the blade forward, pushed Vista out, looked down at him, and said, "Then it's me." Thousands of degrees of heat. A cold light flashed in Shiryu's eyes, and the whole person took a step forward. It turned into an afterimage and suddenly came to the front of Vista. On the path he passed, there was a flame afterimage visible to the naked eye in the air. This is the extremely hot force of the hot fruit, the scorching high temperature formed by the burning air. A knife flow is extremely hot. Wrapped in the power of extreme heat, suddenly fell. Two swords flow horizontally. Facing the blow of Shiryu of the Rain, Vista waved his blade to resist, inspiring the domineering armament to the limit. Condensed on the blade and body, resisting the scorching power of Shiryu of the Rain. Clang! The swords collided, and the sparks splashed everywhere. This is not the shattering flames on the blade, but the strong friction that erupts between the collisions of the blade. Shiryu of the Rain slashed with his sword and stepped forward, leaving layers of heat waves in the air in the area where his blade passed. Captain Vista. When some members of the Whitebeard pirates saw this scene, their expressions changed. Some people tried to come up to support, but they couldn't even get close. Shiryu of the Rain was holding a cigar, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. The blade in his hand swung abruptly, wrapped in the power of extreme cold, and collided with Vista's double swords, rubbing his blade across. Clang! Sparks and waves of fire appear at the same time. During the surging heat, with Shiryu of Rain's sword stance, he briefly suppressed Vista's blade, and Shiryu of Rain took this opportunity to kick it out. Chapter 229. If you want to fight, then die. Vista couldn't avoid it, and was hit in the middle of the chest with a foot. The whole person flew backwards in an instant, and a charred footprint appeared on his chest in an instant. The captain of the Whitebeard pirates, this strength is too unreal. Shiryu of the Rain retracted his legs and looked at Vista, who flew out backwards. His eyes were indifferent. Although this blow did not end the battle, there was no doubt that Vista was at a huge disadvantage. I am afraid that the next battle will not take long and will end with his victory. But, almost when Vista flew backwards and was about to fall into the sea, a figure suddenly flashed past and appeared behind Vista. Silently. A strange blue flame burned up, covering Vistana's chest with a clear flame, quickly burning out the flames. Rain of Hope watched the newly appeared figure and narrowed his eyes slightly. He had never seen this flame, but this blue flame should belong to only one person in the information about the Whitebeard pirates that had been investigated in detail before. Team Captain. Phoenix Marco. There is still a captain, this is trouble. 8 Gods Pirates, the affiliated pirates and others saw the situation here from a distance, and their expressions suddenly changed. It would be fine if it was the captain at the bottom of the ranking, but this one's position is above Foil Vista, and he is the second person in the Whitebeard pirates after Whitebeard himself. In comparison, of the Whitebeard pirates were shocked by the strength of Shiryu the Rain, who could suppress Foil Vista. They did not show any panic or other emotions. Precisely because they knew that this time, not only Vista, but also Marco came. Thanks, Marco. Vista stood up straight, and under the influence of Marco's regenerative flames, the burns on his chest had basically recovered. Who was covered in blue flames, turned his head to look in the direction of Shiryu of the Rain. His face was cold, and he said, "The 8 gods pirates are indeed a group of unreasonable guys." "So what?" Shiryu of the Rain snorted coldly, and a red glow flashed in his eyes. Marco looked at Shiryu of the Rain with a cold face, and said, "This is our territory, do you think it is possible to snatch something?" Shiryu of the Rain said coldly, "How would you know if you don't try?" "Then let's go to war." Marco spoke coldly. To this extent, it is no longer something like a conflict that can be calmed down. This will be an inevitable war. You don't have to think about it, you can still get out of here alive. Humph. Shiryu of the Rain snorted softly and closed his eyes slightly. When he opened it again, there was a scarlet and cold edge in his eyes, and he said, "Then you can try it." Seeing Shiryu of the Rain, facing himself and Beasta, dare to be so arrogant, without the slightest intention of putting people in his eyes, a flash of anger flashed in Marco's eyes. Since the people of the 8 gods are going to go to war, there is absolutely no possibility for them to back down. In this sea, their Whitebeard pirates have never been afraid of anyone. Boom! The two sides clashed immediately, and the blue flames intertwined, and the cold sword light tore the sea. In the violent roar, countless waves splashed everywhere. Of the first team of the Whitebeard pirates, Marco's strength is self-evident. Of the Phantom Beast's undead bird fruit gave him an immortal body. Unless his stamina is exhausted or his abilities are restrained, all damage is meaningless to him. Clang, clang, Shiryu of the Rain fought Marco with his sword and fought dozens of moves in an instant. In the fierce conflict, Shiryu of the Rain also sensed Marco's difficulty. Of this undead body is extremely restrained for swordsman. Swordsman is an existence that abandons defense and concentrates everything on attack. And Marco, with his immortal body, can ignore the swordsman's extremely powerful attack. At the same time, it can also be used to attack the relatively weak defense of the swordsman's body. Tough ability. Shiryu of the Rain's face darkened. If Marco and Katakuri fight, the odds of winning are hard to say. And if he fights Katakuri, he thinks his odds of winning are 1 point higher than Katakuri. When he confronted Marco, because of the problem of ability, it was a headache, not to mention that there was a foil beside Beasta who was eyeing him. Since it's a war, there's nothing to say. Foil Beasta looked at Shiryu of the Rain who was fighting fiercely with Marco, and after a moment of pause, the edge of his eyes flashed, and he rushed up. If it's a duel, it's naturally 1-on-1. But this is not a duel, it is a war. Of war is to annihilate all enemies. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 230, More Than People. Who is afraid of who? Chang. Rain Shiryu faced the sword of Vista and was forced to swing his sword to resist. At the same time, he was kicked by Marco, and the whole person flew out to one side. Board of the pirate ship and smashed into the bottom of the ship. A scorching hot force spread out from the hole in an instant, burning the entire lower half of the sailboat into a vacuum, and the coughing sound of Shiryu of the Rain could be heard. Cough. A pair of 2, it's still a bit reluctant. Shiryu of the Rain was covered in flames and slowly walked out of the hole. Foil Beasta said calmly, "So, it is a stupid act to start a war on our territory. Prepare to face death. I've said it before, this is our territory, not a place where your Yagami pirates can go wild." Marco narrowed his eyes, and the corners of his mouth curved slightly. With a snort, he charged towards Shiryu of the Rain again. At the same time, Beasta also bullied himself. Whoosh, whoosh. Shiryu of the Rain faced 2 captains alone, and one of them still had a lot of restrictions on him, and he was suddenly caught in a huge predicament and could only keep parrying. After several consecutive parries, Shiryu of the Rain still showed a flaw. He was caught by Marco and kicked in the shoulder. The whole person rolled over and turned around in the air a few times. One-shot flow, Zanhua. Shiryu of the Rain held the hilt of the sword with both hands, the blade of the sword inserted into the ground, and stopped lowering his body. The power of the hot fruit was fully stimulated, and the entire earth was instantly covered with a layer of flames, spreading in all directions. Immediately after, Shiryu of the Rain stood up, and every move seemed to pour out endless heat. The whole person left behind afterimages in the void, and when the blade was swung out, it left behind a trail of brilliance like moonlight. With Shiryu of the Rain's full blast, Marco and Vista's offensive was slightly hindered. But the strength of the two is as great as Shiryu of the Rain. In the case of joining forces, Uzeliu is alone. No matter if he surpasses two people, he still falls into the disadvantage bit by bit. Vista's sword chi left a bloodstain on Uzixi. Whoosh! Marco turned into the blue claw of the phoenix, leaving a claw mark on Shiryu the Rain's back. Under the joint attack of Marco and Vista, Shiryu of the Rain was injured one after another and became more and more embarrassed. Although these are minor injuries, the further you drag on, the worse the situation is obviously. Because of Marco's special ability, even if Shiryu of the Rain wanted to attack Vista, he couldn't do it first, and Marco could always use his body to resist the attack. Captain Shiryu. Looking at this scene, the members of the Eight Gods Pirates were secretly anxious in their hearts, but there was nothing they could do. Mention the lack of free support. Even if he could, it would be difficult to intervene in the battlefield of Shiryu of the Rain and Marco. Comparison: the pirates of the Whitebeard Pirates are a big boost. Although 2-on-1 is a bit disgraceful, they are all pirates, and this is another war. In war, there is only victory and defeat, not benevolence and righteousness. Kill them. Dare to invade our territory and let them see how powerful we are. Many pirates under the Whitebeard clamored, wielding their weapons and attacking continuously. Vista held two swords in his hands, and slashed at Shiryu of the Rain one by one, and suddenly his whole body burst into flames. Two swords in both hands, they fell head to head from top to bottom, bursting with tyrannical power, and the petals flew. Shiryu of the Rain couldn't dodge and was forced to swing his sword to resist. The huge gap exposed in the chest was instantly seized by Marco. Bang! Under Marco's foot, Shiryu the Rain's body was bent into a bow shape, and the whole person flew backwards. He fell hundreds of meters away, and there was a smear of blood from the corner of his mouth. If it is a Kaichi Akainu, a Navy admiral with a natural devil fruit, even if he is injured by such an attack, it will not be very serious. But for a swordsman like Shiryu of the Rain, the damage from this blow could not be ignored. Although this blow alone won't cause serious injury, but if you hit it a few more times, it's bound to be unbearable. Have you given up yet? Marco looked at Shiryu of the Rain, who stood up straight again. With Shiryu of the Rain's strength, if he wanted to leave, he and Vista might not be able to stop him. However, looking at Shiryu of the Rain, he had no intention of leaving. If you want to leave when you are seriously injured, it will be too late. Shiryu of the Rain in his prime, he and Vista might not be able to stop him. But if Shiryu of the Rain, who was seriously injured, couldn't be stopped, then they wouldn't have the face to be captains anymore. 1-on-2, you have no chance of winning. Marco continued to speak. Shiryu of the Rain released the hilt of the sword with his left hand, put it on the corner of his mouth and wiped it, wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth. He lowered his face slightly, but a heart-pounding smile suddenly appeared at the corner of his mouth. Chapter 231. The situation has suddenly changed, and the army is coming. Is it? It's true that you can't win 1-on-2, but what if it wasn't 1-on-2? When Shiryu the Rain's voice fell, Marco frowned slightly. Feeling vaguely aware of something, he turned his head and looked back. As far as the eye can see, two large pirate ships appeared, hanging the flag of the Yagami pirates. Reinforcements coming again. Marco's face changed suddenly. Vista also frowned and said, "There is trouble, but Dad and the others should be on their way soon." Which is a kilometer in radius, and the body of someone on the ship flashed, turning into a red light and disappearing. When it reappeared, it was already on the battlefield. He was wearing a black cloak, and there were faint arcs of lightning up and down his body. Leader of Giants, Helding. It's a little embarrassing, Captain Shiryu. Halding looked at Shiryu of the Rain, who had many scars on his body. Shiryu of the Rain let out a heck and said, I can't die yet. Here comes the tricky guy. Marco looked at Halding, who suddenly appeared like a flicker, and his face showed a hint of solemnity. Halding's name, of course, he couldn't have heard of it. That Halding showed just now is definitely a very troublesome character. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The sound of sticks tapping on the ground and clogs stepping on the board came from a distance. I saw Fujitora in a black cloak, holding a wooden staff, walking slowly towards this side. Although the movement was slow and did not show any momentum, it naturally gave people a sense of oppression and heart palpitations. It's really troublesome now. Vista's expression became ugly. Of the first team of the Yagami pirates, with a bounty of 1 billion Bailey. Although this bounty is not as good as Shiryu of the Rain, the first team is undoubtedly ahead of the second team. Moreover, Fujitora joined the Yagami pirates a lot later, but a person who joined late can be ranked higher. What does that mean? Mostly it is more difficult than Shiryu of the Rain. It was still 2-1 on their side a moment ago, accounting for advantage. In an instant, it turned into a 3-on-2, and it was their turn to fall into a stupor. Fujitora came to the front of the two of Marco, holding the wooden staff, and spoke in a calm and low voice. He opened his eyes without pupils, only the whites of his eyes, looked in the direction of Marco and Vista, and said, the old man has already understood the specific situation. Although the devil fruit was discovered in your territory, the devil fruit has always belonged to the discoverer. Therefore, can I ask the two of you to make some concessions? Marco said with a cold face, what if you can't? Fujitora slowly put the wooden staff in front of him, held the handle of the staff sword with one hand, and slowly pulled the staff sword out, and said, then only. Use force to make the two retreat. Already. When Fujitora was talking, Shiryu of Rain and Halding tacitly did not speak. When Yagami Soto was away, Fujitora represented the center of the Yagami pirates, with a position similar to that of the vice-captain. Although they can't decide some major things, they are ranked ahead of them. As Fujitora's voice fell, the staff and sword in his hand suddenly waved. Of the gravity fruit was instantly stimulated by him. Spreading from the staff and sword, it shoots into the unknown sky. After a few seconds, a bright light flashed at the end of the sky. Meteorite, meteorite. Marco and Vista looked up at the sky, and both showed a hint of surprise. They were also seeing Fujitora's abilities for the first time, and they only guessed that Fujitora was a troublesome person. Now it seems that there is no need to guess, this character may be more troublesome than imagined. Vista, retreat first. Marco took a deep breath and made a choice immediately. The 2-2-3 situation is extremely unfavorable to him and Vista, and it is obviously not the right way to face each other. Whoosh, whoosh. Marco and Vista quickly exited dozens of meters away. Fujitora's sight was domineering, clearly capturing the movements of the two. He moved his head slightly, and the staff and knife in his hand waved in the direction of the two of them. Under the action of gravity, the meteorite changed the trajectory of its fall and continued to smash in the direction of the two. Drink. Seeing that the falling meteorite could not be avoided, Marco could only shout. Bathed in blue flames, he turned into a phoenix and rushed towards the meteorite. At the same time, Vista also raised his hands and swung out two swords, cutting the meteorite into 4 pieces from the center. Boom! The meteorite that was cut in half was smashed by Marco, and the remaining part fell on the sea, splashing a lot of waves. Aftermath swayed in all directions, and the war on the battlefield was curbed in an instant. Everyone can only struggle to maintain their shape so as not to fall into the sea. Excessive force, smile. Shiryu of the Rain looked at the turbulent battlefield and spoke at Fujitora with a blank expression. I am so sorry, I forgot that this is not an island. Fujitora touched the back of his head and responded apologetically. But Shiryu of Rain didn't buy it. It's no wonder that Fujitora can be so careless. Just when Shiryu of Rain was talking to Fujitora, Helding turned into a thunderlight and came into the air. Of Marco and Bista, he raised his hand sharply. Philo reminds you. 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 232. Appeared, the strongest man. Day Tiger. With a wave of Helding's arm, a huge white tiger roared suddenly in the sky, charging towards Marco and Bista brazenly. Marco and Bista had just blocked Fujitora's blow, and faced Helding's attack. Their faces were not very good looking, and they continued to block. Whoosh! Shiryu of the Rain didn't bother to talk to Fujitora, so he stepped on his feet and rushed towards Marco and Bista. He was oppressed by the 2 of them just now, and he was bound to come back. Chang! Shiryu of the Rain slashed out with a sword, mixed in the shock wave, and slashed at Bista. Bista was forced to parry with his sword, but he resisted the attack of Shiryu of the Rain while resisting the Day Tiger, obviously unable to block them all, and the whole person staggered back. The scorching force hit his arm along the blade, making him feel the scorching pain. Kill without mercy. Shiryu of the Rain looked indifferent and continued to attack with his sword. Fujitora and Shiryu of the Rain. Marco and Bista are losing ground, and the situation is even worse than the previous Shiryu of the Rain. A short period of time, Marco was bombarded and shattered into a flame. And Bista also flew backwards, with embarrassing scorch marks on his face. If Marco hadn't resisted some of the attacks for him, his situation would have been much worse. But even if Marco has the ability of a phoenix, he cannot achieve infinite recovery. The stamina will be consumed a lot, and once the stamina is exhausted, it is equivalent to the end. The ability of animal-type phantom beasts is even rarer than that of nature-type. Fujitora sensed Marco's situation, his brows moved slightly, and he spoke slowly. Marco did not respond, his face was gloomy, knowing that the situation was very bad. His physical strength is good enough, and he can protect Bista at a critical time. But once the physical strength is exhausted, it will be slaughtered by others. Whoosh! Whoosh! Shiryu of the Rain and Helding continued to attack without pause. After a few people fought fiercely, Marcosta flew out again. This time, a trace of blood spilled from the corner of Bista's mouth. Obviously, even if Marco had the ability to be immortal, it was impossible for him to be in front of Fujitora, Shiryu of Rain and Helding. Protect him from all damage. However, just as Shiryu of the Rain attacked Marco and Bista again, a figure rushed towards the ice. With a domineering look, and blocked the opponent's blow with a horizontal sword. The man did not repel Shiryu of Rain with one blow, but the whole person was extremely flexible, flipping in the air like a feather, and landed smoothly on the pirate ship. Ah, if you want to hurt them, you have to pass me first. The man had orange hair and a scar on the left side of his left eye. He looked at Shiryu of the Rain with a smile on his face, and that smile contained the confidence and perseverance that belong to the strong. Whitebeard Pirates, Captain of the 4th Division Saki. Gravity Knife. Fujitora noticed Sachi's appearance. He lowered his face slightly, and clenched the handle of the staff sword. A violent gravitational force condensed on the blade and was slammed out by him. Om! The entire void in front of it seems to be twisted by the explosion of gravity. This knife did not have any knife-like trajectory, and it attacked Saki so unstoppably. Almost at this moment, a figure rushed over against gravity and roared. His arms, it turned out to be a forcible blow from Fujitora's gravity sword. Captain Joe's. The pirates of the Whitebeard Pirates showed ecstasy. Captain Sachi and Captain Yoja both appeared, that is to say. Someone looked up into the distance, and sure enough, as far as they could see, several ships with the flag of the Whitebeard Pirates appeared. One of them is the main ship, the Moby Dick. Huh. Marco took a long sigh and fell next to Sachi and Joe's, staring at Shiryu of the Rain and the others. I didn't expect the other party's support to come so quickly. Fortunately it came in time. Sword light flashed, and Bista also came to Marco's side. Four of them looked at Fujitora and Yujiliu 3 from a distance, but they didn't make another move, but looked sideways at the rear. There. On the ship of the Moby Dick, a figure held a naginata. Going forward step by step from the rear of the deck, Naginata stood on the deck, making a dull sound. He came to the front of the deck and stopped. There was no imposing manner, no vicious expression. But the whole person did not seem angry and arrogant, shocking the audience. The strongest man in the world. Whitebeard. Edward Newgate. Whitebeard. Looking at the figure on the deck of the Moby Dick, whether it was Shiryu of the Rain or Fujitora and others, they all felt a pressure from instinct. Not the influence of domineering, nor is it the influence of momentum, it's just the name of the world's strongest who has shaken the sea for decades. To read the underlined version of the novel, please download Fei Lu's novel. Chapter 233, Battle. War. War. Dad. Daddy is here. Many pirates of the Whitebeard pirates looked at the Whitebeard who appeared, and couldn't help showing deep awe and admiration. Whitebeard's expressionless face swept across the battlefield. He glanced at the pirates under his command who had suffered heavy casualties, his eyes kept passing, and finally fell on Fujitora and Shiryu of Rain and others. You guys did a good thing. His eyes were not angry and arrogant, he looked at Fujitora and Shiryu of Rain from a distance, and said, devil fruits and so on are all trivial things that are not worth mentioning. But for hurting my children like this, how are you going to give Lao Su an explanation? Iori. The moment the voice fell, Whitebeard raised his head and looked at the sky above. Only see. Above the sky, a black shadow is slowly falling, it is a pirate ship. When the pirate ship fell on the ice, the figure standing at the forefront of the deck was revealed very clearly on the battlefield. He was wearing a black cloak and his face was silent. 4 emperors. Yagami Kangdu. It's your people who hurt my subordinates, Whitebeard. The 8 gods Kangdu stood at the front of the deck, looked at the Whitebeard calmly, and said, if you want to explain, you should also give me an account. The air was silent. Whitebeard stared at Yagami Kanto for a few seconds, but instead of being angry, he laughed. The laughter was full of domineering. Gee la 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 la, I haven't met such a crazy kid for many years. As the voice fell, a shocking aura surged from Whitebeard's body. Would be intimidated even if they looked at Whitebeard from a distance. Under the momentum of Whitebeard, Yagami Kangdu's expression did not change. Then, what do you want to explain? Whitebeard's laughter stopped, he held the Naginata sword and looked at Yagami Kanto from a distance. The tone is full of wild and domineering openings, and there is a vague domineering surrounding him. Yashin Kangdu's expression remained unchanged, and his eyes said, the devil fruit was discovered by my people and belongs to us. As for my subordinate's injury, your territory will make up for it, and I think Fishman Island is good. As the voice of Yagami Kangdu fell, anger appeared in the eyes of Marco, Vista and the others. If it weren't for the conversation between Whitebeard and Yagami Kangdu, they would have been unable to restrain themselves and rushed up to do it. I originally wanted Fishman Island. Whitebeard grinned again. The laughter gave people a feeling of falling into an ice cellar, and the momentum was vaguely like a volcano about to erupt. Yagami Kangdu's words are clearly stated. I don't want to talk more. Since Yagami Kangdu didn't want to talk about it, then Whitebeard naturally wouldn't talk nonsense. As a legend who has ruled the sea for decades, his reputation is piled up with countless bones. If you want to go to war, then go to war. What a fear. The laughter suddenly stopped. Whitebeard looked down at Iori Kangdu, and said in a cold tone, are you joking with Lao Su? If you want to take Fishman Island from Lao Su, show your skills and talk about it, Yashin boy. The moment the words fell, Whitebeard's left hand suddenly clenched a fist. A gleaming white halo surrounded his left fist, and immediately punched in the direction of Yagami Kangdu. Boom! This fist bombarded the void, causing the atmosphere to suddenly appear with cracks like a mirror shattering. A terrifying shock force suddenly erupted, bombarding the entire front. Wherever he went, it was only the aftermath of the attack, and the invisible shock force seemed impossible. The heavenly might that resisted, fell down. Yagami Kangdu spoke in a calm tone, his right hand clenched his fist, facing the direction from which the shock hit. He also threw a punch, hitting it in the void. In the void caused by the different space of the reincarnation writing wheel suddenly collided with the power of shock. Not good. Watch out. Although Marco and the others were not above the midline of Whitebeard and Yagami Kanto's air-to-air bombardment, they were also within the scope of the impact. Noticing the power of this collision, he couldn't help but change his face. Everyone almost did not hesitate, immediately. Back away into the distance. Boom! Under the shocking gaze of countless people, the void between Yagami Kanto and Whitebeard suddenly exploded as if artillery fire had been ignited. The terrifying aftermath erupted, and in an instant, the waves with a radius of 1,000 meters were lifted up. Some pirates in the vicinity, almost instantly, rolled out without any resistance. It's like being swept up in a storm, and it's hard to even let out a scream. The aftermath swayed in all directions. Even Fujitora and the others had a sullen expression, and they forcibly stabilized their bodies in the aftermath. Boom! I don't know how long it took, the aftermath finally dissipated in a roar. The area between Yagami Soto and Whitebeard, no one can stay there. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 234. There is no turning back, go crazy. It is indeed a bit of a skill. Whitebeard slowly retracted his left arm, looked at Yagami Kangdu from a distance, and narrowed his eyes slightly. Eight-God Kangdu also withdrew his right fist, his expression remained unchanged, and said, "You are not too old to move." Goo la 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 la. Even if you're too old to move, it's not a kid like you, who only has the strength to eat milk, to win. Domineering look on the Whitebeard's face, and a dignified shout. He held the naginata in his right hand and placed it horizontally in front of him, holding the hilt in both hands, and slashed towards Yagami Kanto. With the shock of the naginata, the attack range is farther and larger. If the previous blow was just a warm-up move, then with this blow, Whitebeard has already shown its true strength. A knife. Atmosphere. The shock force contained in the slashing of Whitebeard's knife, before it falls, makes people feel that their breath is stagnant. Seems that the sky is falling and the ground is unstoppable. It is now 18 years of the era of the great pirates, and there are still 4 years before the war on the top. Whitebeard's age is 68. For ordinary people, this is already the age of aging. For Whitebeard, even though he can't show the strength of the youngest and most peak period, he still has the terrifying power that can make the whole sea timid. Boom! Facing Whitebeard's knife, Yagami Kangdu broke out into 8 dungeons. The formation, a punch hit. The azure blue dragon shock wave roared out, wrapped in the rippling void, and rushed out. Let me see how much power you have now, Whitebeard. The 8 gods Kangdu's eyes are calm, and the void around him is constantly rippling. In the blink of an eye, he came to Whitebeard. A terrifying shock wave suddenly erupted, and the aftermath alone terrified the people around him. Chang! Whitebeard crosses swords. The shock wave Whitebeard's huge naginata collided, and the terrifying pressure caused the entire void to tremble. The Moby Dick at the feet of Whitebeard, under the blow of the 8 gods, the whole ship sank by more than 10 meters in almost an instant. Boom! The aftermath swayed in all directions. Some Whitebeard pirate officers on the Moby Dick, as well as the captains who ranked lower, were forced to retreat under the aftermath of this blow. By the collision alone is far from being able to intervene. Even if I looked at it from a distance, I only felt my heart palpitate. Boom! After an earth-shattering roar, Yagami Kangdu's body came to the air 10 meters away. A lot stronger than expected. These 3 collisions, he roughly judged Whitebeard's strength. With Whitebeard was at least 20 years old in the era of the Great Pirate. It happened, that is, 2 years later. And at that time Whitebeard, even when he was sleeping, was not able to hurt Ace even a little bit. His strength was evident. Today's Whitebeard is 2 years earlier than that time. Has not yet entered a period of rapid decline due to dark injuries, and its strength is not much inferior to its peak state. Can easily react in front of Yagami Kangdo's blow across space, and can block the full shockwave of Yagami Kangdo's 8-door armor formation. Speed is fast enough, the sight is top-notch, the armed color is top-notch, the physique is tyrannical, and the attack of the shock fruit is beyond doubt. Except, today's Yagami Kangdo, I am afraid that no one can compare with Whitebeard in terms of pure attack power. No wonder you dare to be arrogant in Laozi's territory. The muscles on Whitebeard's arms tightened, looking at Kangdo, the 8 gods in the sky, and said, but at this level, it's still far from winning Lao Su. The moment the voice fell, Whitebeard jumped up. Naginata sword in both hands, it fell sharply on the head. Wrapped in the power of terrifying concussion, he slashed at Yagami Kangdo. Boom! The concussion and the shock wave collided again. The entire sky seemed to be torn apart under this blow. On Whitebeard's body emerged unstoppably, trying to devour the 8 gods Kangdo. And Yashin Kangdo's 8-door Dunjia formation did not lose at all, even stronger than the defensive power of the Overlord domineering. Violent conflict. The conflict between the two emperors even affected the sky high in the sky. The dense dark clouds turned into a terrifying vortex, which was turned over by frantic stirring. Crackle. The conflict between the two emperors broke out in the sky, and countless black thunders also emerged from the void. This is the shock formed by the conflict. Screen. Curious. Marco and the others looked at the sky from a distance, and their expressions were a bit dignified. In the face of this kind of power, even if it is not aimed at them, it gives people a feeling of extreme danger. It's completely unstoppable. Shiryu of Rain lit a cigar again, looked at Yagami Soto and Whitebeard's confrontation, and took a sip. While exhaling the smoke, he turned his head to look in the direction of Marco and the others. There was a bloody and fierce look in his eyes. Chapter 235, 8 Gods Pirates vs Whitebeard Pirates. It's time to kill these guys. As Shiryu of Rain's voice fell, Fujitora and the others all withdrew their gazes towards Yagami Soto and Whitebeard. Head, he looked at Marco and many other captains. Marco and the others noticed the eyes of Fujitora and the others, and turned their heads one after another. Under the Iori and Whitebeard's banners faced each other at a distance of dozens of meters. The momentum is constantly rising, and the evil spirit is surging. Step, 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 the captain of the 6th Division of the Whitebeard Pirates, the captain of the 7th Division, and others, all jumped off the boat as the battle between Whitebeard and Yagami Kangdo broke out. Walking to the side of Marco and others, they gathered together. At the same time, Statham, Rhodes and the others also wore black cloaks and walked to the side of Fujitora and the others. Two sides have not yet started, and the conflict between the momentum has already made the air in the field extremely heavy, making countless people dare not take a breath. From the Yagami Kangdo side were all wearing black cloaks. The pitch black formed a line, and vaguely seemed to connect the momentum into a line. Although the number is not as many as the 15 captains on Whitebeard's side, it seems to be better in terms of momentum. In comparison, although the Whitebeard pirates are scattered, as the captain of Whitebeard, all of them have experienced countless battles and are high-level cadres of the top forces in this sea. No one showed any sign of timidity, some were just evil spirits and wickedness. Huh. Marco breathed a sigh of relief, with a hint of indifference in his eyes, and said, it's to let these guys know what will happen to hurting our companions. Kill. I don't know who roared, and the rising momentum of both sides finally broke out like a landslide. Fujitora, Shiryu of the Rain, Statham, Helding. Almost in an instant, all of them made their hands together and stepped forward. And at the same time, Marco, Jose, Sachi, Vista and many other captains also made a bold move at this moment. Confidence and arrogance appeared on his face, and he rushed forward with anger. It started. There are pirates from the Whitebeard Pirates, as well as several ordinary members of the Yagami Pirates, muttering with a slight tremor in their voices. This trembling is not fear, but tension and excitement, the surging of blood. The Whitebeard pirates of the Eight Gods pirates. War broke out. In the sky thousands of meters away from Iceland, a white bird was flying in the sky. It has a video camera on its head, and it is constantly recording the situation on the battlefield. The situation here is also transmitted to the Navy and the world government in real time. At this moment, the entire naval headquarters was solemn and under the highest degree of martial law. Countless naval elites lined up on the square directly below the fortress, ready to go out at any time. Ah la la, it really still started fighting. In the office on the top floor, Chingji leaned back on the chair and spoke. "Do you want me to go there, Mr. Waring states?" Kizaru tilted his head to look at Marshal Sengoku. That being said, he didn't want to go in the bottom of his heart. Yagami Kangdu was the last four emperors he didn't want to encounter right now. Waring states looked at the slightly blurred picture and pondered, and suddenly there was an aftermath on the battlefield. "I saw the screen, Z." With a bang, it collapsed and disappeared. Where the four emperors clashed was not that easy to monitor. Iori and Whitebeard fight. No matter whether we can seize this opportunity or not, we can't be indifferent. Akainu sat there with a serious expression. Under normal circumstances, it is very difficult for the Navy to destroy one of the four emperors. Any force of the four emperor pirates cannot be destroyed by dispatching one or two generals. It is only possible to defeat it if a great force is deployed. And this is just a defeat, it is more difficult to kill. But if the four emperors go to war with each other, it will undoubtedly be an excellent opportunity has been created. Once Whitebeard and Yagami Kangta are both defeated, then they have the hope of destroying Yagami pirates at a very small price. Even killing Iori and Whitebeard at the same time. Not bad. Marshal Waring states nodded solemnly. It is impossible for them to remain indifferent to this kind of opportunity in any way. The Navy has seized many existences across the sea, and some of them were even able to compete with Roger Whitebeard, but they were all defeated by the Navy in the end. A large part of it is because they fought each other and gave the Navy a chance. Sakazuki, you will be in charge of this operation. Immediately go out to Atwal, Stubat Sea area. Of the complete war between the Whitebeard pirates and the Yashin pirates quickly spread to all major forces after about half a day. 4. The war between the two sides, many power leaders are not surprised. Neither Yagami Aoto nor Whitebeard seem like people who will give in. But when this war starts, no one can predict the impact it will have. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 236, Fierce Battle, a Full-Scale War. Boom, boom, boom. Above the waters of Edwall, the roaring sound continued to explode. Fujitora faced off against Marco, the undead bird. With the ability and absolute strength of the gravity fruit, he firmly held the upper hand, and Marco couldn't get any benefits. Of the rain was supposed to deal with Foil Beasta, but was stopped by Diamond Yoja. Not to mention the defensive power of Jaza's armament color and shining fruit. Even if Shiryu of the Rain had to defeat the 5th, his defense would be difficult. But Shiryu of Rain, who has the hot fruit, still has the upper hand. Confrontation between Rhodes and Thatch, both of them are flexible characters, and they are vaguely comparable when they fight fiercely. Foil Beasta swung the double swords, slashing out a cross of sword energy, slicing across Helding's huge body. But Helding's sense of sight had already caught Beasta's attack. As early as the moment before, the figure turned into an afterimage, using the speed of the 8 Gates Dunjia formation to avoid Beasta's slash. Immediately after, Helding's figure flickered and appeared directly in front of Beasta. Holding a huge battle axe in both hands, it slashed towards Beasta. Due to the extreme speed, Beasta is difficult to dodge. He slashed his swords horizontally, the petals fluttering, and slashed towards Helding's battle axe. Swords and axes clashed, and there was a loud roar. Boom! With a huge roar, the two of them took a few steps back. A terrifying shock wave swept out, and the flying sand and gravel had a very strong impact. "I didn't expect your big man to be so tough," was a habitual smile on Beasta's face, but this smile did not appear to be light. Originally thought that Hierding's body was huge, and he could easily catch the flaws, but what he didn't expect was that Hierding's knowledge was extremely strong and his speed was outrageous. After a fierce battle, he was left behind. Day Tiger. Giant roads roared, directly opening the 8 doors and 7 shock doors, and his whole body was covered with terrifying blue steam. The terrifying waves swept through, and under the roaring white tiger, it seemed to crush and devour everything in front of him. Statham was also full of momentum, wielding a huge hammer, and it was a bunch of low-level naval soldiers. Wherever he went, there was no one at all. Damn, why are there so many perverts from the 8 Gods pirates? Just when the giant core showed great power, causing headaches for the captain and cadres under the Whitebeard, a dark shadow suddenly appeared on the sea in the distance. The shadow got closer and closer, and finally came to the edge of the battlefield. Even the giants are similar to children in front of him. Oh, it's finally here. Little Oz. The pirates of the Whitebeard pirates looked at the shadow, and they all showed excitement and smiles, and they all cheered for a while. At this time, the eyes of the 8 Gods pirates also fell on the shadow, and their eyes changed. It's a bit too big for this size. Shiryu of the Rain opened his mouth in surprise. The giant clan was already huge. This little Oz is bigger than the giants. Although such a large body is a living target for his existence. But to deal with ordinary players, it is to crush them with absolute size and strength. Killing our companions is unforgivable. Little Oz stood there, overlooking the battlefield like a giant peak, and let out a roar that shook hundreds of miles. He rushed forward suddenly, and every step he fell caused a lot of splashes of water. He rushed to the front of the giant gold bag, raised the huge giant chopping knife with both arms, and slashed it down with a ruthless knife. Chang! The huge power brought by the huge size makes his knife wrapped with terrifying power. Goldbag was repulsed abruptly. Goldbag was slashed and wounded, but no other injuries. Strong Oz's simple power is, he will never be able to do anything to him in a short period of time. In both hands and let out a loud roar. An astonishing force erupted, and it turned out to be an attempt to overturn Little Oz. Woo! Little Oz sensed the opponent's strength, and could not help but let out a roar. This was the first time someone had dared to compete with him. His arms were tensed, and a terrifying force erupted. Holding the huge chopping knife and pressing down, trying to split Goldbag directly. Between the two giant forces made everyone nearby stop moving and couldn't help but take a breath. Crack! The sound of the ground crumbling spread throughout the battlefield. Under the rivalry between Little Oz and Goldbag, the huge chopping knife could not hold up after all, and was cut off abruptly. Drink! At this moment, Statham got rid of the enemy, rushed over, and slammed into Little Oz's right leg. Little Oz was staggered and took 2 steps back, barely not falling down. Anger, he stretched out his big hand, picked up Statham, and smashed Goldbag ruthlessly. Chapter 237. The Peak Showdown, the Battle of the 4 Emperors. Boom! Under the violent roar, Statham and Goldbag were a little embarrassed, but they did not suffer too much damage. Not so much. Goldbag grinned and roared at Little Oz. Being entangled by the giant core, no matter how powerful Oz was, it would be difficult for him to pass the giant and attack the ordinary members of the Yagami. And just when the two sides were fighting fiercely, several loud noises that could be called earth-shattering broke out in the center of the battlefield. The aftermath that swayed was like a storm, causing countless people to be shocked and shocked. The fire is extinguished. Yagami Kingta doesn't need to tie the ninja seal at all, the terrifying wave-like flames will directly cover the Whitebeard. Whitebeard showed no timidity, and the whole person showed that he was above the sea. Belongs to the domineering of the strongest, and punches it out. Boom! The void shatters. Yagami Kangdo's arrogant fire was extinguished but fell, and the void in front of it seemed to be crumbling. Whitebeard's fist fell, making the space seem to be shattered, and the power shook the world. At this moment, the strength of Whitebeard is not much different from that of the peak period. Needless to say, his fighting skills were honed from countless bloody battles. Not as reckless as Kaido, nor as lacking in skill based on physique alone. Compared to the time of the Top War, even the sneak attack of his son, the attack of Akainu and Kyabu couldn't escape. The Whitebeard in this state is undoubtedly extremely terrifying. But the power of Yagami Kangdo is equally astonishing. If it weren't for the repulsion between the powers of the world, Yagami Kangdo with full firepower could completely suppress the Whitebeard. Boom! Bright light flickers. Yagami Kangdo flicked his body and stepped back, while Whitebeard also stuck his naginata on the ground to stabilize his body. Whitebeard's face was calm and he didn't speak, but he sighed inwardly. He was still old after all. No one can stay on top forever. His armament is domineering, 1 point stronger than Yagami Kangdo. But the power of the Junjun fruit could no longer bear the wanton eruption of his youth, which was slightly inferior to Yagami Kangdo. Otherwise, the current Iori Kangdo can't do it. In the face of evenly splitting the fight, he will definitely be suppressed by him. Water escape water dragon bomb. Yagami Kangdo is also very aware of the state of the Whitebeard at the moment. Compared to the old Whitebeard, the young man's heart is naturally full of fighting spirit. The whole person took a step forward, and the water dragon that exceeded 100 terrified roared out. In all directions, he wanted to devour Whitebeard directly. Are you underestimating me? Whitebeard snorted and slammed the naginata on the ground, not panicking at all. Facing the ubiquitous water cannonballs, he turned his fists out and slammed the hammer to both sides. Kacha! It sounded like glass breaking. His fist fell in the air, but it seemed to hit the substance. The atmosphere showed a scene like ice breaking, and the shock force erupted in all directions. Boom boom boom. The roaring sound one after another, like firecrackers, is generally continuous. After blocking Yagami Soto's move with an all-round attack, Whitebeard immediately hilt of the knife in his hand and waved fiercely at Kangdo, the 8 gods in front of him. Yagami Kangdo, who had already foreseen Whitebeard's slash, leaned to one side, avoiding Whitebeard's slash, and at the same time his figure disappeared under the power of God. Om! The void fluctuated, and the figure of Yashin Kangdo could not be seen, but a white tiger roared and rushed out. Was too sudden, and Whitebeard couldn't withdraw his naginata anymore, and he was forced to parry with his arms. Bang was hit by Iori Kangdo's attack. Whitebeard staggered and stepped back, as if Iori Kangdo had the upper hand. Father! How is it possible? Seeing that Whitebeard was repelled by Yagami Kangdo, many pirates of the Whitebeard pirates showed a touch of shock. There was a hint of disbelief in some people's eyes. This was the first time they had seen him, but someone could actually beat Daddy Whitebeard back in a one-on-one situation. Except Yagami Kangdo, even the beast Kaido couldn't do it. When Kaido came to look for Whitebeard for a duel, he was also suppressed by Whitebeard's terrifying fist all the way, and it was almost impossible to defeat Whitebeard head-on. Dad's body. Marco paid attention to the direction of Whitebeard. His gaze changed, revealing a hint of worry. As the doctor of the Whitebeard pirates, he knows the physical condition of Whitebeard the most. Although the current Whitebeard has not yet reached the critical point of unbearable internal injuries, there is no doubt that he is no longer as brave as he used to be. Whitebeard is old after all. If it was the father 20 years ago, no one would let Dad take a step back. Marco clenched his fists. On the field. After Whitebeard was repelled by Yagami Kangdo, he didn't have any intention of disappointment. Instead, he clenched his naginata sword tightly, shouted loudly, and slashed toward Yagami Kanto. To the point where he is now, he has gone through too many battles. He is not always invincible, but in countless battles, he has reached the strongest position. When exactly started, Whitebeard, who is called the strongest, has already forgotten. He only knew that when he was young, he also had defeats and defeats. But all the enemies eventually fell at his feet. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 238. The world changes color, the strongest. Click. Whitebeard's knife fell, and the entire void in front of him shattered like glass. The force of the shock hit Yagami Kangdu, and Yagami Kangdu was unafraid, and it was also a punch. Wrapped in the aura of destroying the sky and destroying the earth, slammed into the plane that was torn apart by the shocking fruit. That shattered like glass collapsed in an instant under the attack of the huge blue dragon. Boom! The aftermath swayed, and the shocking waves swept through the sky. Yagami Kangdu stepped forward, the whole person instantly crossed the space, came to the front of Whitebeard, and threw a punch. Shock waves swept out, and Whitebeard hurriedly resisted, and his footing instantly became unstable. At the same time, the 8 gods Kangdu made another move, and the shock waves erupted again and again, enveloping them with fierce power. Whitebeard didn't panic at all, his eyes sank, his thick right arm clenched a fist in the air and waved it violently. Kacha! A punch hits the void, and the void shatters again. Facing Whitebeard's shock, Yagami Soto also threw a punch. Tianyu and Junjun collided again, and every time they clashed, there was an earth-shattering movement. During the collision between the two sides, although Whitebeard resisted with all his strength, he was still weaker than Yagami Kangdu. You can't protect the title of being the strongest, Whitebeard. Yagami Kanto looked at the backward Whitebeard. Even in comparison to his size, he is much smaller than Whitebeard. But the momentum of the unfolding made the air heavy. If you can take it, you can take it and try it out. Whitebeard's demeanor was calm, his sturdy right arm was holding the Naginata sword, and the strong muscles on his arm could be seen bulging. When the average person reaches this age, they are already very old. Whoosh! Whitebeard and Yagami Kangdu shouted angrily at the same time, and rushed towards each other. Of a Whitebeard with top fighting skills and top-notch arrogance, Yagami Kangdu basically won't waste his power on useless movement techniques. Whitebeard's fighting style is, no matter what your body's style is, no matter how good you are, it is a punch and a knife. You will always be able to catch your position. To deal with this kind of existence, head-to-head confrontation is naturally the best choice for Yagami Kangdu, which can maximize the elimination of the problem that Whitebeard's combat skills are higher than his. And, in terms of speed alone, Yagami Kangdu is faster than Whitebeard. When the attack power is almost the same, it is the key factor to decide the outcome. In the constant attack, Yagami Kangdu can always play a bit more than Whitebeard. Boom, 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 another series of face-to-face booms. I don't know how many fights. How many knives. After the punches, Yagami Kangdu, with his speed, threw a punch faster than Whitebeard. Forcing Whitebeard to parry with his arms, he can no longer fight against Yagami Kangdu. Bang! Iori Kangdu's attack is obviously not so easy to parry. Under Iori Kangdu's punch, Whitebeard slid back 4 or 5 meters. After suffering a huge impact, 2 deep pits appeared where the 2 feet stood. Cobweb-like cracks spread wildly. Whoosh! After Yagami Kangdu smashed back Whitebeard, he continued to attack. Both sides knew very well that if this kind of battle continued, the winner would definitely be Yagami Kangdu. Crack! Facing Yagami Kangdu's onslaught, Whitebeard lifted his foot and an earthquake broke out. The entire ground shattered in an instant, and the violent shock spread toward Yagami Kangdu. Yagami Kangdu straightened his body and left the ground, ignoring the earthquake caused by Whitebeard. After coming to the air, he clenched his fists, and the terrifying chakra gathered on his fists. The White Tiger's funeral. Om! The densely packed white tiger heads appeared, roaring towards the Whitebeard. Because the space is shaken, it is difficult to see where this trick passes. Naginata shock. Whitebeard noticed the power of Yagami Kangdu's move, and he also showed a dignified expression. Clenched the Naginata in his arms, and his armed arrogance was aroused to the limit. In a roar, the power of the shaking fruit was fully activated, 8 Gates Dungia Formation and Junjun Fruit. That can be called the most destructive power in the world. After being stimulated to the extreme by Yagami Kingta and Whitebeard, they collided in the void like this. There was no sound, and the whole world was instantly silent. The power of this blow has already surpassed the sound, making the world pale for it. Everyone on the battlefield, such as Marco, Shiryu of the Rain, and others, almost all stopped their movements and looked sideways at Whitebeard and Yagami Kingdo's direction. Countless eyes were gathered. I don't know how long it took. It seemed like a moment, and it seemed like an endless eternity. The two extremely terrifying forces were mixed together, and finally turned into a pitch-black vortex. The vortex was deep and dark, as if it could devour everything. Even Marco and the others, from a distance, had a feeling of heart palpitations. Ultimately, the black vortex slowly dissipated. The figure of Yagami Kingdo appeared in the air, floating in the air, and the corner of the black cloak showed a fragmented scene. Under the Yagami Kingdo, Whitebeard maintained the posture of swinging out the naginata, and was slowly retracting the naginata. Chapter 239, Old and Strong, Edward Newgate. A wisp of blood slid from the corner of the mouth silently. This blow was a blow that both sides fought fiercely for a long time and tried their best to break out. And the highs and lows of this blow and the results are also clear at a glance. Junjun and the 8 Gates Dungia Formation, Whitebeard and Yashin Kangdu. The latter. Better yet, sea breezes blow over desolate Iceland. The already cold island added a bit of coolness. It's a pity I can't play against you 20 years ago. Yagami Kingdo looked at the Whitebeard below, his eyes were calm and silent. If it was Whitebeard 20 years ago, the outcome of this battle might be even more exciting. The Whitebeard is now a little weaker after all. But to be able to fight Yagami Kingdo to such an extent, he already deserves the name of the strongest. No one can stay on top forever. Whitebeard is very clear in his heart, very clear that he cannot always be the strongest, and sooner or later someone will replace his existence. But this battle is not over yet. Show any feelings of discouragement because of the injury from one move. Whitebeard's eyes are always like a pair of cold fronts. Put your 5 fingers together, make a fist, and swing it out. 1 go. Boom. Yagami Kingdo raised his hand and pressed the shock wave, blocking Whitebeard's blow. His eyes were silent, and he entered the state of battle again. The whole person suddenly flashed, came to the right side of Whitebeard, swept the whip leg, and burst out. Whitebeard swung his sword to block it, and fought with Yagami Kingdo again, roaring continuously. But different from the beginning. Since the blow just now, Whitebeard has fallen behind and was injured. Each roar hit the hearts of Marco, Joe's and the others, causing their hearts to sink. Everyone is reluctant to accept it, and they don't want to think about it. But no matter what, no matter how you look at it, unless Whitebeard can regain his youth, time can be reversed. Otherwise, in this battle, the Whitebeard sea will fall into the abyss. No, find a way to help Dad. Marco resisted the heavy weight on him, wrapped in blue flames, clenched his teeth and punched Fujitora constantly. He began to attack with all his strength, trying to block Fujitora. Chang, Chang. Fujitora waved his staff and blocked Marco's attacks several times in succession. Backhand slash, a terrifying gravitational force erupted, instantly crushing Marco's body and turning it into blue flames. After the blue flames dissipated, they quickly converged toward the sky more than 10 meters away, turning into the form of a phoenix. Fluttered its wings, it was about to rush to where Whitebeard was. But almost at this moment, Fujitora also came into the air. Holding a sword in his hand, his body was calm, and he stood in front of Marco. Get out of the way. Marco gritted his teeth and rushed forward. Fujitora slashed out, forcibly pushing Marco back to the ground. Your Excellency should be very clear that speaking is superfluous. In any case, it is impossible for Your Excellency to pass. Marco gritted his teeth, knowing that it would be difficult to get around Fujitora. that was reborn from the ashes of the undead bird. He tried to repel Fujitora at the outburst of Fujitora's fearless death. Fujitora's face darkened slightly, and he did not fight him recklessly. Instead, he waved his staff and knife to parry, and retreated from time to time. Seemed that he was attacked by Marco and fell into a disadvantage that could only be parried. But in fact, it stopped Marco in place, not leaving Marco any chance to cross. Even with the body of a phoenix, it can't get around. Boom! Another reckless fight between Yagami Kingta and Whitebeard, and Whitebeard retreated again. Dad! Joss roared angrily and slammed forward. He pushed Shiryu of the Rain several meters away, trying to rush in the direction of Yagami Soto to support Whitebeard. Shiryu of the Rain snorted coldly, and with a wave of the blade in his hand, the scorching power spread. The terrifying flame made Jordan pause for a while, and was stopped by Shiryu of the Rain. Joss's eyes were split, and he looked at Shiryu of the Rain angrily. Sword and slashed at Joss's back. Joss fell into anger, couldn't dodge in time, and his body flew out, and there was a scar on the back. In the case of frontal resistance, with the defense of diamonds and the strong armed color, Joss was able to block the rain. Shiryu's attack. It is obviously impossible to resist Shiryu the Rain's sword with his back alone and remain unscathed. Damn! Thatch was holding a fire gun in one hand and a dagger in the other, also trying to support Whitebeard. But there was no way, he could only be embarrassed by Jeers and Nina, who joined forces to block him in place. You were distracted just now. Gels opened his mouth leisurely, and suddenly came to Sachi's side. He kicked out and kicked Sachi's waist. Although Sachi was instantly attached to the domineering of the armed color on his waist, he was kicked by Jeers, and the whole person still flew out. If he was hit hard, his face turned pale, and a trace of blood spilled from the corner of his mouth. Boom! Iori Kangdu slashed out with a sword, and Whitebeard retreated again. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 240, After all, it's old. Dad. Vista couldn't keep his calm any longer, and he gritted his teeth and tried to rush towards Whitebeard. But the blue infuriating flashed, and a terrifying giant with a height of hundreds of meters, exuding strong red steam, instantly blocked in front of him. This is Hyrding's strongest form, the 8-door armored formation, Yekai mode. The whole person is wrapped in red steam, raising his hands and feet as a destructive momentum. Boom! Hyrding punched out, and a terrifying shock wave broke out suddenly, shrouding Vista in it. Sword to break the shock wave, and Hyrding let out another low roar. The shock wave turned into a day tiger and swallowed it towards him. On the entire battlefield, no one can support Whitebeard, whether it is the leader in the top ranks or the captain in the bottom ranks. And, aside from Vista and other top-ranked captains, even if they were able to support Whitebeard, the captains from the 6th place onwards would not be able to play any role at all. With Yagami Kangdu's current strength, even if they could block the aftermath of the attack, they couldn't stop Yagami Kangdu's frontal blow at all. Just in an instant, you will be directly bombed. Boom, 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 the battle is still going on. Almost a day and a night have passed since the outbreak of this battle. Of embarrassing scars appeared on Whitebeard's upper body. On the other side, the Yagami Kangdu had no other injuries at all, except the black cloak showed signs of damage. Not that after being injured, it fully recovers with the ability of the fairy body. But the battle has continued until now, and the 8 gods Kangdu has never been injured by Whitebeard. The speed is faster than that of Whitebeard, and the color of seeing and hearing can predict the future. In this case, as long as Yagami Kangdu himself is not stupid, it is almost impossible for Whitebeard to hurt him. As time goes by. Originally a deadlocked battle, because the battle situation of Whitebeard was not good. Result, it naturally caused the entire White Thief to gradually fall into a huge disadvantage. About the Whitebeard pirates is centered on Whitebeard. When Whitebeard's battle is extremely unfavorable, almost no one can fight calmly. In comparison. On the other hand, the morale of the 8 gods pirates was high, and countless people were surging, roaring and shouting, and the momentum was frantically surging. Their eldest, their captain, one of the 4 emperors, Yagami Kangdu, who is still less than 30 years old, has suppressed the strongest man in the world, Whitebeard. The strongest. Yagami Kangdu is the strongest. Some people are surging, and countless people are screaming in their hearts. For decades, before the era of the great pirates, it was Whitebeard, one of the 3 great legends who ruled the sea. The strongest position in the world will finally be replaced by a latecomer. And the person who will be replaced will be their captain, the boss of all nations, the 8 gods Kangdu. This battle will be recorded in the annals of history, and they, who are on this battlefield, are also writing new history piece by piece. Time goes by. The sky experienced day and then fell into night. When Whitebeard was at a disadvantage, the situation of the Whitebeard pirates gradually turned to collapse. However, since this is the edge of Whitebeard's territorial waters, the support of the Whitebeard pirates is very fast, and nearly 20 pirates under the Whitebeard's command have arrived one after another. Compare. On the Iori pirates' side, the support force has only 4 ships. With massive support, the Whitebeard pirates managed to stabilize the situation, but only barely. Because in the center of the battlefield, the battle between Yagami Kanto and Whitebeard, no one can interfere. The people of the Whitebeard pirates, no matter what tactics they use, are unable to support Whitebeard. In front of Yagami Sudo and Whitebeard, who burst out with all their strength, unless they are the top 5 captains, they are not qualified to support at all. He couldn't even intrude into the vicinity of Yagami Sodo and Whitebeard with the aftermath. Boom, boom. There are people from the Whitebeard pirates who use strange abilities to remotely interfere with Kangdu Yagami. But those inexplicable lights, suddenly enlarged shells, etc., were all within a few dozen meters of invading the battlefield, then stopped in the air, and were defeated by the aftermath of the 2 people's fight. Day Tiger. Yagami Kangdu let out a low drink, and the shock wave exploded, causing Whitebeard's injuries to worsen. But at the same time, Whitebeard waved Kong Yunchi fiercely, and at the same time, the shock wave of the shaking fruit broke out, which also brought some trouble to Yagami Kangdu. A character of Whitebeard's level, even if the comprehensive strength of Yagami Kangdu is already 1 point stronger than him, it is impossible to defeat him in a short period of time, and he can only continue to expand his advantages. Time keeps passing. Whitebeard's physical strength was obviously not as good as when he was young, and when the battle lasted for 2 days and 2 nights, it had already begun to weaken. Whitebeard couldn't ignore Yagami Kanto's continuous attacks. He left a lot of wounds on his body and looked hideous and terrifying.